Hey everybody, welcome to the studio. I want to show you some of the tips and tricks that I'm using to master some tracks. I used to get in my head about this a lot and overanalyze and try to pay someone a bunch of money. I'm here to show you that it's not such a complicated process. Although I do use some specialized equipment, you can do similar things in your DAW, and I'm going to take you in the DAW and show you some of the plugins and tips and tricks that I'm using to quickly master tracks. My goal with this session today was to just get in here and do 2 tracks. These tracks have been sitting here for years. Enough perfectionism. Let's just streamline it. Let's get it out the door and let's make some new music, baby. So here we are in the session. I used the Softube Console One for my signal chain, and as you'll see, I've got the mastering chain set up for these are 2 different tracks. So I've got the same chain for both. I've got the Console One first. It's real cool. You have these little knobs here, but it's more interesting to control them with a physical touch surface, and I have other videos where I reviewed that on the channel, so check that out. And then the next is the Maxim plugin, which is a stock plugin from Pro Tools, and that just makes it a little bit louder because we've all got to have our stuff as loud as possible, right? Center plugin gives me some stereo width and some punch. I like to use that if the track's feeling too narrow, which it often is. And the SSL Bus Compressor to glue it together and just let it pop, let the vocals kind of smooth over a little bit. So that's the signal chain. Let me show you how the buses work. So each track is sent to a master bus, and that output goes to the input of an auxiliary input track, which is my master fader basically. It's also going to a print bus. So when I'm ready to print the track, let's just print a section here. Loving you has been hard. Let's dive into some of the nuances of how we did this master. So the first thing I did was I went in and I cross-faded the beginning and ending, cut off some of the drumstick intro that the drummer had done. Let's turn these off. And by the way, the hotkey for this is Control left click. If you want to copy a plugin over, Alt drag with a left click. I like to hear a loud part of the mix, like emotional or just kind of the up part of the song, because that's easier to mix to, and then the down parts are easier to squeeze in. Okay, so I know this is going into the chorus, so I'm just gonna kind of keep looping this one part, and that's how I mastered. I did all these tweaks over the course of an hour. You change one thing, it changes the other, you change this back. Okay, so you heard it there without the Console One. Now, I love the Console One because it has a bypass button on it. So I'm going to use that. Off. On. Hear it again. On. Off. Having the Console One on gives it a little bit of a boost because I'm doing a little bit of EQ and a little bit of compression and drive, and that's the theme with mastering the way I've been taught by the greats like Joe Reinecke and Michael James. Shout out my boys. Small changes, you add a little bit, a lot of small changes stacks up to one big change. So that's the theme here. Compressor in now. Watching the sun come up and it's gonna live it alone too long. Now let's put the EQ. Living alone too long. Watching the sun. And I have some drive on, and I'll show you just how that works. Living alone too long. Watching the sun come up and it's gonna live it alone too long. So you don't want to use too much of any one thing. Sometimes I mess with these input and output gains, but here I kept it at 0 on the input, and I actually lowered it 0.5 dB on the output because I felt it was a little hot coming in. It's gonna get compressed anyways later in the master and then online on YouTube. Bring it down a little, give me a little headroom, guys. The next, I bring in the center, so let's hear that. Living alone too long.
watching the sun come up and living alone too long.
It's real subtle. These are all subtle, real subtle. It's real in the center, and I just kind of widened it a little. I used a little punch. By the way, I've got headphones on, but you should always mix on speakers. Let's hear it again.
Living alone too long, watching the sun come up and living alone too long. If love is a free,
Right? It's real subtle. So you have to kind of really listen, but it's like when you put the two together.
living alone too long, watching the sun.
Right? We have the mixes now kind of popping out. It's looking a little sharper, a little shapelier, a little sexier. I put a little Maxim on, and I don't like putting too much of it. I'll show you what music in the mid-2000s sounded like. Way too much compression.
Living alone too long.
I don't like that sound. I think it sounds harsh and metallic and not in a good way. So I just put a little touch on there. Minus 0.2 dB, minus 0.1 dB. You probably can't even notice it.
Living alone too long, watching the sun come up and living alone too.
Yeah, I can't even tell the difference. So that's just there to catch random transients. And the last one it makes a difference is the SSL Bus Compressor.
Living alone too long, watching the sun come up and living alone too long.
I like to keep the threshold as high as possible so that it's not doing too much compression here. You watch this needle in the bus. I don't like it coming up past 4, and I put about 3.7 dB of makeup gain. And it's important to match the gain, because if you just use a compressor without making up the gain, it sounds quieter, and your ear has this psychological effect where things that are quieter sound worse and things that are louder sound better. So to really understand the effect, you have to add gain to match the volume, to volume match your track. So I'll show you without the gain and you'll see what I mean.
Living alone too long, watching the sun come.
Right? You would think it's better without the compressor because it's quieter, but I just took the gain down, but let me match the volume sort of. You'll hear the actual effect of the compressor more clearly.
Living alone too long, watching the sun come up and living alone too long.
It's not a drastic change, but it feels like it kind of glues it together. You don't want to put too much gain, because then it's just gonna your track, similar to how that Maxim did. You don't put enough, you're not volume matching correctly. So that's why they call it makeup gain, because when you're compressing, you're actually turning the track down. The other thing I'm doing is I'm pushing about 1 dB here on the fader, just a little bit of extra boost. Why not?
Living alone too long, watching the sun come up and living alone too long. If love is
And if you're sick of hearing this section of the song, so am I. But this is part of the process of mixing and mastering, is you find a little section or two and you go in there real deep. If I had more time, I would find a reference track. I've been doing this a while, so I know what I'm looking for. I'll let you hear another track.
turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans. It's you.
You heard the difference already, right? And when you're doing the Console One, you got to be careful. It has tracks on the top, 1 to 20, and you got to make sure that you don't start messing your one track up. See, I did that earlier. Now we're on this other song, and we're going to mess with that.
Turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans. It's you. It's you.
Out, now out.
Halloween
Now
and
in.
mistletoes and everything that I don't know I do.
You notice the light bit of compression. I like to keep the compressor under 3 dB. You know, if it jumps out a couple times past 3, it's okay, but I don't like it up here at 6 and 10. I try not to use my eyes. It's impossible these days. You're staring at the screen like that, right? I try to use the knobs as much as possible, and I try to close my eyes or look away from the screen when I'm making mix decisions and mastering decisions like this. Let me just show you how I sweep. Go up all the way, oops, then I get the cue I want, and then I sweep it around till I find an annoying frequency or a good frequency. Some people might say you should never boost. I think there's no rules in any of this. You should try to cut more than boost. If you see a frequency that makes the music sound better and you want to boost it, go ahead and boost it, baby.
Turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans, it's you.
Pretty cool, right? I found a frequency at 0.7. I didn't like some of the way my vocal sounded or something, so I just cut it down half a dB. And again, with all these changes, it's very subtle. See, half dB, 0.7, half, not like 1 or 2 dB, like half dB, max 1 dB. This is mastering. On mixing, okay. Mastering, no, not okay. Real subtle.
Turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans, it's you. Turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans, it's you. Turtlenecks and magazines.
So you can hear how it narrowed up when I bypassed it.
Turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans, it's you.
Quite a difference, but it's very subtle, and that's the point. You build and stack it, little changes leads to big changes.
Turtlenecks and magazines and
Just catching transients. SSL comp.
turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans, it's you. It's you.
Right?
Turtlenecks and magazines and picture frames and skinny jeans, it's
It just sounds flat without it, don't it? Most of the changes between masters that I'm finding is the Console One. How much compression am I putting? How much drive? Where am I pulling the EQ? This is a very subtle line. It's not going up here or down here. It's not crazy. It's not rocket science. It's just vibe. You do need a treated space to hear these things accurately. You do need some engineering knowledge, which I'm trying to give you right now. You need a few tools. You don't need to spend thousands. You can do it in an hour. I hope this is helpful to you. You saw my mastering process. You see, it's not that complicated. It's a lot of small changes. You stack them up and it makes one big change. You don't have to overthink it. I used to try to get the perfect situation and force the magic to happen. You gotta let the magic happen. Well, magic happens when you just let it. What do you think about mastering? Let me know in the comments. What's your process? What's your signal chain? What's your flow and your philosophy about it? I want to hear from you. If you get value from content like this, subscribe back to the channel. I do a lot of stuff on here, so I'll see you next time.